So I'm gonna give you the concept download, give you a reminder to use biometric measurements toward a goal. In the history of trying to bang my head up against the wall of other people's heads to get this shelter, there's been some common blockages for me as well. First, realize that when you teach this shelter to people, they're not going to get it the first time. Unless you baby them, unless you're right there with them. So this is how I do it with the students, and you're going to be part of that experience this weekend. We take apart a debris hut so you get the cross section. Make sure everybody's hands are on that process if possible so that they can get some muscle memory on how thick those walls are and how high that bed is. Then you go out and you build one. The one you build is going to have a lot of errors in it. In Western culture, goal-oriented mentality means you failed because you didn't reach your goal, and then people turn off the debris hut and it's a myth. It doesn't work, it's not worth crap. And that can't be further from the truth. The myth is that we're somehow better, and if it doesn't work, it means it doesn't work. The truth is your skills still suck. Suck it up and keep trying until you get it right. If you find yourself surviving, then you're in an adolescent stage of whatever situation you're in. You should be flourishing. Nature doesn't want half-assed, semi-functional symbiotic relationships. Nature strives for balance, and balance usually means health. So, with the debris hut and our relationship with the landscape, this temporary transition shelter, if you can put that next to every time you write the word debris hut, that would be like not enough. This temporary transition shelter will keep you alive and warm in up to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. A pair of shorts without a fire, need of rope or knife. I'll say negative 20 Fahrenheit again. And then there's the however. It must be built correctly, and this is where people fall short on their first 6 attempts, usually, or greater. So, I want you to have this concept in mind when you head out there, because if your life sucks when you try your debris hut for the first time, it's not the debris hut. I wish I could give you the actual true life stories of Mike and Colby and everybody who had the ha-ha moment. Well, Kevin's here. He was hot in his debris hut. Okay, at 50 degrees and being 2 days of rain on his body and in his shelter while building with wet materials. He was overheating. Okay, and he's not saying liar. So, am I lying? No. Okay. I don't know what happened, Chad. Yeah, how'd it go for you?
It went well.
Yeah. Did you notice the temperature change inside, outside?
Yeah, it was very warm inside. Very warm.
Now, here's the catch. There's no heaters in here. It's your body heat, and it's not a pile of leaves. It's a lot. I've got this guy's a genius. He's a pain in the ass. I've known him since 5th grade, but he's an environmental architect. He works for the big cities, New York, Philadelphia. He does their public libraries and public schools, passive solar, radiant floor heating, all of those things. He's an environmental architect, and he builds the most beautiful kayaks and boats. Okay, so primitive skills practitioner and architect. He looks at these and he says he can't believe the intricacies and overlapping theories, advanced theories in architecture that are involved in these things. So I'm going to share with you these theories and how they apply to a simple pile of frickin' leaves. So when we say in the class, and you'll hear it again this weekend, primitive doesn't mean stupid, it means profound simplicity. Here's your heat generator, your core temperature. As it radiates out, it's going to eventually eke through your debris, some of it. Some of it is going to swirl around in here until it cools off, and then it's going to slowly sink and get pushed out as it cools of your door entrance toward the universe. Size matters. If it's you versus the universe, and I have to bet money on either if your core temperature is going to reach the absolute zero of space or the other way around, it's a pretty easy bet. So, I say this gets pushed out because incoming during this cycle of air exchange, we have an exchange of air leaving, so there needs to be air being drawn in, is the cold, dense air from the ground and low-lying areas, usually carries moisture with it as well. Now it has to work to get up to your sleeping area, all right? And so what we have is a cycle or an air exchange system that we can control through various means. The first step is your bed. Okay? Your bed does more than protect you from conduction, which is your body heat being sucked into the earth. It actually gets you up off the ground to slow that air, that dense air, so it has to warm up to rise to reach you. Conduction. I'm just going to list these big words because they're the elements of hypothermia. It's prevented by your bed. It also helps to slow down the air currents or the convection, the cooling of your body through the circulation of air, taking that warm bubble of air out and feeding the universe. So we want to slow it down. All right? This dead air space, if built correctly, will maintain between 78 and 90 degrees in a well-dialed debris hut. That takes some factors. When you build for the winter, for instance, your walls are going to be up to your armpits before you can barely touch a rib. All right? The single door plug for 3-season debris hut is replaced by a double door plug or a pile of leaves. Doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be constructed like a cork. It could just be 2 piles of leaves. We even put in a half log at the entrance, slightly ahead of the entrance for me, because I like being comfortable getting in there. As your draft dodger, you know those things that people, door frames have, to slow down that air even further. Okay.
Mark, I have a really quick question.
Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. I interrupt.
I noticed when we tore this one apart out here, you guys have a lot of grass bundles also that you've made and put in there. Applying this to an area like City Plains or something.
Yeah.
Is that okay to pile it that deep too with grasses? I mean, would that...
Grasses are excellent because they're hollow tubes of air. It's like qualifill, right? So grasses are the preferred method if you have enough grasses. You're even better shape than leaf debris. Any environment that can produce a debris is one we're going to use. We share a snow debris hut. Well, what are you going to use except that it's growing and still green on these needle leaf trees, and it takes 3 to 4 trees completely delimbed to create enough shingles of spruce or fir to mound your insulated snow on to prevent the dripping from coming into your shelter, and create a spruce or fir bough bed thick enough that's going to keep you off that dense ice beneath the snow. I don't know about where you're from, but when it snows here, there's a certain point where it's going to stay snow white for months, right? And then you get a really dense packed snow just because of gravity thawing and melting. So yeah, each environment will have its own unique solutions to provide debris. Having said that, sometimes you know that you're just going to have to suffer with keeping a fire going all night because you're the only one out there. It's -8 and you have a sled team or you're on a snowmobile. You're not going to get a good night's rest. Let's put that out there. You got to wake up every 2 to 3 hours to make sure the fire doesn't go out or turn over because you're frying on one side and cold on the other. But you endure it because you're going to be back cush in the city or in the village tomorrow, right? Those are going to happen. And I'm not going to build a debris hut if I'm hiking the Appalachian Trail or spending a weekend, in Acadia. It's just ridiculous. Why would I burn 4 hours or 6 hours, 2 hours looking for the spot and then 4 to build a debris hut? When I'd rather just be hanging out and eating seaweeds and tracking wolves and things, Does that help? All right. So yeah, your leaf litter, your grasses, newspapers crumpled up, cardboard is great as long as it doesn't get wet. Right, because there's little holes, it's all perforated, corrugated boxes. Those are all fantastic. And we can use those insulative things, except for the paper products, a lot of them when they're wet, because our core temperature is the reason why it's heating up, and the heat itself will take that moisture out and away from you and wick it away just like vortex. Next thing you want to do to your interior once you've got yourself dialed in. Oh, before we go any further with this is important, but make sure you can roll in your shelter on your bed with your ridgepole before you put your final ribs on. I built half a debris hut, and before I seal my doom to what I'm dealing with, I get in one last time. I look to make sure my feet aren't poking up on either side of my ridgepole when they're sitting there, right? I make sure I can roll to my side and I got clearance for my hips, even if 2 fingers is my standard for me. And I can clasp my shoulders. So as long as I can roll on my belly, roll to my back, I'm good. And then I go out my back again. So where do these ribs need to be? I want them snug tight, maybe a hand away from my hip, if I can, against that bed. And then I just start laying them down, and putting the rest of my stuff on there, and I'm done. Okay. The magic of making this work below freezing and to get yourself away from the bugs is the igloo door. The igloo door goes on last, and it sucks because you're so tired, right? That when you have this shelter, a lot of people stop. The igloo door, you've all built forts as kids, right? You take forked sticks, but you don't pound a hole in the ground using the forked stick. You take a stick, pound a hole in the ground, then take your forked stick and wedge it in. And those the biometrics for your igloo door. Here's the opening to your debris hut. Sit on my ass. Put my shoes up or my toes pointing to the ridgepole, and one hand width away from each hip. I make a mark in the ground. Right? Then I get up. Now my debris, here's my door opening, comes out to like here. So I have a lot of biomass going up and around here. I'm going to take a forked stick, put it right here, as a fork right here, and I'm going to take a pole and ram it into my debris, and it's going to be braced with that forked stick, and I'm going to put it on my other forked stick. The fork on your stick, same thing, should be about hip, or maybe at most hand width. I go for 2 fingers high. So you've got the fork coming up about 2 fingers above where your waist is when you're laying on your side. On each side, at a width of a total of 4 fingers wider than your hips. In other words, just big enough to get in without wrecking the darn thing. Now, once you put the 2 stretcher sticks on either side going into your door, and they're secured by fork sticks on all 4 points, I take more fork sticks, 45-degree angles, sometimes in the middle, and then I put my ribs on as vertical as possible on the sides and across the top like a barbecue grill. And then load leaves so that it forms to invisibility.
So you're kind of making a vestibule in the front that you're kind of...
Yes. Beaver do it. Quincy and igloo shelter designs depend on it. It works for these too. All right. Yes, this here is the original profile of that debris hut. What we did is we made this structure here, right? And then we mound the debris up to fill this void. And what that does is it locks the air inside our shelter into this. This is like the magic. This is where the magic happens, right in here. This is where the air exchange happens. We want that bubble of air to hang there as long as possible. Okay? Take care, guys. Safe journey.
We'll see you on Saturday afternoon.
All right. Are you all good with that? Any questions on that? The hardest part is dialing in the shelter beyond. You've all got enough dirt time where you're at a point now, it's all about biometrics and being able to get into your shelter. There's a space where the bed rises here and the door opens here. It better be far enough apart or you're going to be like, your spine doesn't bend that way. So I set my bed back about, I don't know, 2 feet so I can get in at a gradual pitch. You know you've got a good debris hut when at 2 in the morning you have to take a screaming leak and you're debating whether or not to pee in your debris hut or not because it's such a pain in the butt to wiggle out of that mummy sleeping bag 4-season combo tent that you just created to pee and then come back in. But do it because I want you to see or feel the difference atmospherically between what that shelter feels like inside and what it feels like outside. Make sense? All right. Have fun with it, guys. You gotta get your hands on it to do it. I don't know what your plan is, but I encourage you to go out there because it's beautiful and there's birch on the way. All right. Nice.
That's all, folks.
Here's my knee. Here's the bottom of the bed. Right? So what we have here, other than what looks like a bunch of leaves and sticks, is actually an airflow management system. The engine is your core temperature. So as you heat up this dead airspace, the air is going to want to move. It's going to expand out slowly, of course, but by the time it ekes out through these leaves, it's going to be ambient temperature. The reason it doesn't shoot out your door is this area you can't see cut out is actually lower, and ideally in cold temperatures, just like a beaver lodge or an igloo, your bed is higher than the top of your door opening. I don't know about you, but my spine doesn't bend that way. So if you had that in here, you couldn't get into your bed. Unless you move that space where your bed ends forward so your ridge pole comes out to here, then you can drop an igloo door and have enough space to get up in on your bed. So as you heat this area and air leaves, it's causing a draw. And the draw is going to take into your shelter cold, usually moist and dense air. We want to slow that draw down. Thus, not only does your bed height protect you from conduction, the active draw of your body temperature into the earth, it causes that cold, dense air to have to warm up to come up to the level of where you're sleeping. The slower you can create that exchange flow, the warmer, more efficient your shelter is going to be. To the point where, you know, this is a summer weight debris hut. This is going to be too hot on warm nights. Warm nights here in Maine, anything above 60 degrees. Even in your skivvies, you're going to be pouring sweat. So why build it? Half the time, from late June to the end of August, I'm sleeping under the stars next to a lake so that the wind coming off the lake keeps the bugs in the woods and away from me. And if it's raining, pull your wool blanket over your head, you're fine. Or get under a log and drape it over. You don't have to worry. But for the other 3 seasons, this is going to keep you more than alive. Our standard isn't, did you make it through the night or the 5th night? No, make it through. If you're not more comfortable than being in your own bed at home in this shelter, then you've got work to do. Then your skills still need to be refined towards that end. That's the standard, not the goal, because a lot of goals are lofty, but the standard. All right? And this isn't a long-term shelter, by the way. Let me qualify that. Long-term is anything more than a month. Right? This is a transition shelter. And you've got 2 different major approaches out there. One is more available to more people, but it's more gear dependent. And it comes with this, if you're not rescued within 4 days, you're gonna die. I will give this one piece to that approach. Yes, the first 4 days are the hardest. But if you are passionate enough to invest the skills, whether by, I always wanted to do this when I was a kid, or genuine hunger, but if you want to develop your skill sets, and it takes work, it's not a course, it's about 10 years of homework per every weekend of skills gained, right? This is one of the big plateau blockages for most people. They just think it's a pile of leaves. But if you're willing to spend 8 to 12 hours building your first debris hut and it doesn't work, and by your 3rd debris hut it's starting to work, it almost was something I could have made it through the night with, and by the 12th debris hut, you figured out how to keep the mosquitoes out with your igloo door and the slowing down of the air temperature. It suddenly dawns on me, I'm doing this in 4 minutes. No, sorry, 4 hours. And within 4 to 12 minutes of being inside, I can already feel it getting warmer. And I'm wet. And in the morning, I'm waking up dry. Wait, first, how does that happen? Well, it happens like vortex. As that body heat leaves, on the outside of that pipe, sometimes you see steam coming off. And so you can crawl into one of these in a cotton pair of jeans and t-shirt, and if it's dialed in and you put in the dirt time, you're going to come out in the morning dry. What that means for me, because I'm lazy, is I don't have to keep a fire. Now, I want a fire. I need a fire to boil my water, to
harden and shape my wooden tools to cook my food, right? With all the nasties out there and the blood of some of these critters, tularemia, rabies, all kinds of pathogens. I need a fire. But I don't need to depend on a fire to keep me warm at night. And I certainly don't need to feed this always hungry child that will burn my shelter down if I turn my back on it for too long. Does that help? So in my laziness, which is really just a slanderous term for a person who has too many calories, I've stumbled across an efficiency that helps me not only save a lot of time in the long run, but saves me firewood, saves me getting up at 2 in the morning. You know, if I have a shelter that I'm going to build after this, it might be a wiki up or a bark shelter, I'm going to have this sucker sticking out of the wall. And now I have my fire pit over there, it's all enclosed, I have enough dry space even in the harshest rains to do a bow drill or to make quill work or to make a loom, bend snowshoes, right? But if I come in from my trap line that day and it's been raining for 2 days and I can barely feel my fingers and I'm shivering so much I couldn't do anything with any of the fire making devices I know anyway, that includes a lighter or matches or flint and steel, because those days do happen. I don't have to die. In fact, I can sleep comfortably until the next morning or when the storm stops. But the downside is the learning curve. It takes at least 6, sometimes 12 of these from scratch, based on the mistakes you made in the last one, to get it hardwired into your body where you don't need to build a self-standing debris hut. You're walking along the trail and you see a fallen tree and go, there's my ridgepole, and with enough thermal mass on that log that you cut down 1/3 of the debris you need to gather. Oh, and by the way, it's in a beach stand, so the leaf litter is already ankle deep. See, now it's 4 hours, not 6 to 12 hours. And you know how to build it because your intuitive sense says, I got to make my ribs a little smaller here. My chest is too big there. I got to widen it out. You don't have to lay down and measure anything. It's like reading. It's fluid. So it's a myth until you live it, but this debris hut, and hopefully we'll get you there while you're here, is going to it's going to be like severing an umbilical cord to the big box store. You don't need a tarp. You don't need a tent. You don't need a sleeping bag. They're wants. Hell, I don't want to spend 4 hours every time I go camping building a debris hut. So I'm going to bring my Wiggy's -30 bag and my Mountain Quasar or a rugged tarp, and I'm just going to throw that out and be good. Or my preference is a hammock, really. You know, you don't have to make sure you have a clear spot. You just need 2 trees, and it doesn't leave much of a sign after you leave. You know, tactically or otherwise. Alright, I'm off my soapbox, but here's your debris hut crash course. We'll go out and actually do it tonight.